It's my pleasure to welcome PK Agarwal. He is here at the Tiecon Midwest Conference in Detroit, the largest in the region. PK is the former CTO of this great state of California and is now in an even more responsible role as the CEO of Tie Global, which is the largest entrepreneurial organization in the world. PK, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
Good. Thank you, Mateen. Good to be here.
PK, I think it's an enormous responsibility and a big role that you're playing, looking after 55 chapters and growing. We have 15,000 members around the world. Wanted your take on, how you got involved with Tie and your role currently as CEO of Tie Global.
Yeah. So my role, the way I see it, is that I think one of the principal things that I see us doing at the global level is to look at all of the best of all the things happening in the 55 chapters. And if we can simply share that knowledge, share that information, share those practices, and I'm careful here not to use the term best practices because there's nothing best. Actually, one of the terms that I picked up recently that's being used more is next practices because things can evolve. But anyway, my point is that there's a lot of things Tie does well. The whole business of networking, educating, mentoring, but also at the same time, our knowledge is being packaged, our processes are being refined, and I think that the thing to do is to really sort of create a system through which these processes, these technologies, this set of knowledges can be migrated from chapter to chapter. I think that's where principally a lot of value lies. Let me give you a couple of examples that just even at Tiecon, they're having a business venture competition. I mean, that's an example of asking the question that why couldn't or why shouldn't all 55 chapters doing something? So that's an example of next practices. Boston created this TYE, the Youth Entrepreneur Program. So that's an example of something that we are saying we don't have to wait for entrepreneurs to be already in the business world. Why don't we sort of create the entrepreneurial cycle at the college level, at the high school level? So you can see that there's a lot happening in the ecosystem. There's no sort of one central place where innovations are happening. In fact, more so even I would say that there's an interesting sort of metamorphosis that maybe the newer chapters are a little bit more innovative perhaps because they have to try harder. And so there's things to be learned from there. But anyway, that's one thing that in my role as a CEO, looking across 55 chapters of Tie Global, bringing value to the Thai community.
I think there is nobody out there who does, fostering and empowering entrepreneurs globally the way Tie does it. But I think for an organization like Tie, which is so huge and expanded, we have to work sometimes and collaborate with governments, not just here but around the world, and with organizations like Kaufman. So there is a thought that without government initiative, without government support in some areas, it's really difficult to have economic empowerment. You need that stimulus at the right place at the right time. I wanted to understand from you, since you have been also the CTO of California, which is a huge state, what has been your experience and where do you think there are rooms or areas of improvement?
Great question, Mateen. So let me say this, that this has been a phenomenal learning and a revelation almost on my part, simply to realize that what governments traditionally do in terms of promoting entrepreneurship and what could be done. And I really think that Tie can play a very catalytic role in making that happen. So let me give you some examples that'll help amplify this thing. Governments tend to look at the business of entrepreneurship at a much, much macro level. As an example, that most governments tend to sort of go to conferences, trade shows, economic development forums, and with the whole idea that we are going to sell our state. Governors and presidents travel. Obama's going to be in India. Schwarzenegger's been, many different countries with the idea that we are going to bring in investment or we're going to sell our products in these other locations. And that certainly, from a job creation, economic development standpoint, sort of makes sense. But when you look at what Tie does, and Tie does so well, is that really at the micro level, at the grassroots level, creating new enterprises. So I think the future, to me, where Tie can be a catalyst in working with governments, would be in that area to say, okay, we are going to really create new entrepreneurs. Example of some of the conversations we are having with some of our sponsoring entities is that why couldn't we really go to an emerging country that really has a need for economic development? Why could we not go there and use Thai's processes and resources and people and consulting, because we have so many 2,500 charter members who are willing to give. Why couldn't we really start to do things like where we could create 3,000 new youth entrepreneurs and 3,000 mature entrepreneurs within a year? So that's the whole idea of creating that sort of a scale. So I think this is where, to me, I think Thai, I really would love to see Thai chapters or Thai Global work with governments and cities and regions and all that to really create a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I really believe there's a lot of room to play there.
So picking up on that, the region where we are sitting now, Michigan, as everybody say, this was the center of innovation not very long ago. It has taken a beating more than I think other places in this country. But because of time, because of similar other organizations, there's a lot of hope and excitement and sort of a rejuvenation of entrepreneurship, because I think entrepreneurship is the key to drive the engine of economy. Any recommendations for people here or in these sort of regions around the world?
Yeah, so talking about Michigan and California, I mean, those are two of the, if you look at the states with the most severe budget problems, those are the two states actually. More recently, of course, states like Arizona and Nevada have joined because of the housing thing. But historically, historically being looking at last 3 to 4 years, those two states have the biggest number of budget problems. So I think since we are here at Thai Midwest in the greater Detroit region, as you rightfully said, that since the beginning, dawn of the Industrial Revolution, this has been the hub of innovation and entrepreneurship. I think Thai can play an enormous role, and I really feel that the one stepping stone in that process is probably a really simple one, and that is getting governments engaged with Thai. Because historically, if you look at Thai, this has been a pretty much entrepreneurial activity, and we have never really looked at entrepreneurship and governments having an intersect. But now that we have this need for job creation and economic development in the United States, and particularly since you're talking Michigan or even states like California, I think we have to be a little more aggressive, and we have to be a little more reaching out and getting governments involved and find out the agenda that's common to us, and especially the fact that it'll be a lot easier for us, us being Thai, to play in that sphere is that we are non-profit. So we're not really driven by some of the other entities who are coming into this space, but we definitely the profit motive. So I think really first simple step is to reach out to our local governments, to our counties, to our cities, and to particularly the state level, where there tends to be a little more focus on economic development, and really start to shape a joint agenda.